Morning all. For those of you that like my musings about these sort of things, then you're going to be in for a treat, because for the next foreseeable future, that's mostly what my videos are going to be about. The philosophy and psychology ramblings, you know. We're going deep into religious philosophy. For those of you that enjoy Jordan Peterson's musings and ramblings, then my sort of stuff is quite similar, because it's coming from the same place. When Peterson is asked, do you believe in God? Because you're always talking about God, you're always making reference to the Bible and things like this. He says, well, it depends what God is. And of course, because he's a massive intellect, I would think he is the smartest guy around in modern times. He pisses all over the likes of Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and whatever other intellectual. Those people are bone dry. They don't have the essence of life within them, because they don't believe in spirit. Sam Harris appears to be very intellectual, but he's not smart enough to be able to realise that this universe is an actual fact spirit. And so you look at people like this, and he's got a lot of followers. A lot of people would swear that you know, his intellect is second to none, because these people, they can rationalise, they can work things out logically and feasibly, and they're very good articulators. But when it comes down to real knowledge, even Einstein would bring God into the equation. He had no doubt that there was something vastly over and above the human intelligence going on in this universe, and it most certainly pertained to the numinous. And that's why on one occasion he stated that God doesn't play dice, meaning that there can't be anything random and ad hoc that happens in the universe, because everything that God has done, he's done it with purpose and for a meaning. So I'm going to read the first of these notes that I had up on my notice board when I did the video yesterday, for those of you that have seen that. And it's curious, because out of all those notes, this one was the first, and I put them up there some 4-5 weeks ago, and they've laid dormant there, maybe even 6 weeks ago. They've laid dormant because I've been writing the previous 6 chapters, and I wasn't sure which one of those notes that I would be broaching first. But something new, because something put them in an order. And you could say, yeah, well, you wrote them, Aaron, and you know, you put them up there, and so you did it. Well, there was nothing sure, there's nothing certain in my mind. I just put them up there in some sort of order of topic, but with no idea of which one I was going to be choosing, or which several I was going to be choosing to commence on the next chapter. So this one is titled How the Unconscious Will of the Mind Guides Us Towards the Purity of God. Now, when I'm speaking about God, let me reiterate this again. I'm not speaking about any God per se. I'm not speaking about Jehovah, I'm not speaking about Allah. I'm not speaking about any of the Greek gods or the Hindu gods or any of the other gods that humanity has coined over the millennia or time immemorial. I'm speaking about the essence, and for simplicity then I use the terminology God, because what else do you use? I could use spirit, and I very often use spirit interchangeably. In actual fact, I make reference to spirit more than I do God in my chapters. But the title of the book, for those of you that have read in the chapters would know that it's called Closer to God. And then there's a subtitle which says something like experiencing the intelligence of the cosmic universe. I don't even know what I don't even know what the second part of the title is. I never wrote it. So I've got 4 pages, and it's not going to take long. It's only going to take a few minutes. So when I'm speaking about how the universe, how the unconscious will, our unconscious will, I'm speaking lots about how I'm an automated creature and how we all are, whether we like it or believe it or not. I mean, free will has been a subject that's been debated for, again, time immemorial. Whether we have it or not is a very debatable thing, and Sam Harris would reckon that we don't have it. But the law courts all over the world reckon that we do. And so when I made this video a few days ago speaking about the politicians of our times, how they couldn't really be held responsible for what they are doing, because they're being used and manipulated, and they have been procured, they have been indoctrinated all of their lives from the get-go to do these varieties of jobs, to continue with the level of mastery over humanity that the powers that be have a design to do. And they have been groomed, ladies and gentlemen, and don't ever get to thinking that these people are intelligent. What is intelligence? They're just followers. I'll tell you how intelligent these people are. For those of you that know a little bit about British history, the Magna Carta, that was a document which was written up in 1215 during the reign of King John. And what that Magna Carta was all about, it was about the voice of the people expressing how sick they were of the monarchy taking all the taxes and just squandering it on whatever whim they so desired, because they thought that it was their position and privilege to do so. But in 1215, the monarchy had the shock of its life, and it was told by the people under no uncertain terms that although you are king and you think your position has been gifted to you by the divine, if you continue to squander the money that you're extracting out of us for tax, be it on your own head. So the monarchy took that on board, and from that period forward they were always very, very careful about how they spent the money. And a classic example of how not to be a monarchy is in relation to was it Louis XVI or Louis XVII and Marie Antoinette, who were living the life of Riley in all of their grandeur, and the people were starving. And then when Marie Antoinette was told that, ma'am, the people are starving, they have no bread to eat, and she said, well, let them eat cake. I mean, when you look at that, it's kind of like it shows her naivety and level of detachment from the real world. If there was no bread to eat, well, let them eat cake then. No, ma'am, you don't get it. Cake is an absolute privilege, you know, for the monarchy and the very, very rich. The poor people don't have cake, ma'am. They don't even have any bread at this moment in time. And so that's why both of their heads went on the platter. Because they weren't prepared. They probably just didn't know how to get their heads around sharing, because they considered that their position was gifted to them by God himself, and so it was their entitlement. And so if God wants any changes, then God will bring them about. Well, indirectly, God did bring them about. And so then France became a republic. Now, as an aside, a very close friend of mine brought me a book the other day. And he just said, oh, here's a book you might like, it's your sort of thing. And he gave this to me. Now, I don't think he went out of his way to find a book for me. I think it was the book that he just came upon. Now, I know that he goes and visits second-hand bookstores, shops, and this probably just fell in his lap. And from time to time, you know, he'll give me books, but it's always kind of like, oh, I found this book at the same time I bought these, and I thought, well, rather than, you know, throw it away or whatever, I'll give it to you. And I'm not saying he doesn't think of me in a kind way. It's just that it doesn't happen that often, and to my knowledge, he's never bought a book specifically for me. So, and I don't even know, and I would probably think that he's not even read, you know, the write-up on the back. Now, The Cloud of Unknowing, it states this: like Thomas A. Kempis's The Initiation of Christ, The Cloud of Unknowing springs from an age when European mysticism was in full flower. Its author was probably an English country parson of the late 14th century, but his exact identity remains unknown. The book's main theme is that God cannot be apprehended by man's intellect. Now, you may remember me mentioning that. I've mentioned it quite a lot, I think, in recent times, and this was the greatest of revelations that I had over this past year, because I finally accepted. I've been fighting with it, wrestling with it for a long time, probably for the last 12 years, and I've been decrying religion in lots of respects, and I've been decrying love in many respects. And finally, I addressed faith as opposed to the intellect, and I discerned that the intellect would never get you into the kingdom of God. And that's why Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins will never be true intellectuals, because they are missing one of the greatest facets of intellect. You see, this variety of intellect comes from the intuition. It comes from the heart. It doesn't come from the brain, people. And so I was in the brain, left brain predominantly, for many years. But now I've switched, and I've gone quite a lot into the right brain. And that in itself has put me in a very special place. And so that's why I'm speaking about that. I've discovered something, people. It's wonderful, because I fought against it for so long. I didn't want to address it. I didn't want to look into even this stupidity of a concept called faith and belief. They're just fantasy. They just pertain to fantasy. And it wasn't until I said to myself, Well, according to you and your philosophy, Aaron, the whole world is a fantasy in any case. And I went, oh my God, exactly. So why don't I just take on one more fantasy? Why don't I take on board the faith of a god or gods and see how that fares up? And I did. And it fared up very, very well, because it enabled me to discover probably the major secret of this life, which is via faith we enter into the kingdom of God. And so, speaking about here, the book's theme is that God cannot be apprehended by man's intellect, and that only love can pierce the cloud of unknowing which lies between them. Its charm and serenity have always ensured it a place among the devotional classics of the church. First rate, and loses nothing by its translation into more common usage. That's written by the Times Educational Supplement. And this book was written. Now, I get a feel for, books before I look at when they were written, and I'm going to say that very possibly within the first half of 1900s. And so let me see when it was written. 1961. Translation published in 1961. Yeah, so just over the first half. Now, why I'm mentioning this, people, is because, like Providence, I've said to you, I said I'm a blessed person, and I don't want to dwell on this too much, and I don't want to tempt fate. That a meteorite will fall out of the sky and carry away half of my brain, but it will leave me with enough life to continue with half a brain, and then people would be mocking me and shouting, aha, so you are golden bollocks, right? Well, how are you going to come out on top of this one? Providence, synchronicity, because the very words that I am uttering out into the ether, out into the akasha, out into the collective unconscious, the universe is supplying me with what it knows I'm ready for next. It's powerful. I don't need to go searching for any more books or videos. They all are placed in my lap. And this is why I say that my life is preordained. There's something that is written that I must do. And it's kind of like I'm a child, and my parents see that I have an interest in, let's say, discovering nature. And then I get nature books for Christmas and my birthday, and randomly throughout the year people will give me these books, and when I'm out and about I'll find one in the most obscurest of places, and at that age I wouldn't be able to see that somebody else was predominantly gifting me, you see. But now I am of an age and I can see it as clear as day. So let me read this for you now. I'm going to read the title again, just to ensure that you are in the groove that I'm about to broach. Because those of you that are doing the hoovering at this moment in time, or you are washing the car or mowing the lawn, and you're just saying, I'll just bang on Awake and Brave audio, I don't think you're going to be extracting what really needs to be extracted. How the unconscious will of the mind guides us towards the purity of God. The unconscious will is suggesting that my everyday egoic will doesn't have anything to do with this. It's the unconscious will. It's something that's coming out of the unconscious, or is coming out of the ether. It's something that I'm not contemplating or searching or seeking to do. Guides us towards the purity of God. Now, when I'm speaking about God, I'm speaking about the very essence, what we are. We're all God. This is all God. And if we want to have a better relationship with ourselves, our bodies, our minds, the environment in which we are living within, then to get closer to the nature of all of those things, which is God, is a very good idea. For those of you that are stressed and your diet's poor and you're not exercising and you're not sleeping well, you're not spending any time in nature, you are not in the kingdom of God. You are not doing what the universe wants you to do, which is to engage fully and wholesomely in everything that you are. So, throughout my life, for as long as I can remember, I have reflected upon. Let me read it now instead of imagining what is here. Throughout my life, for as long as I can remember, I have, upon reflection, been guided in my actions unconsciously by the will of God. The guidance has made manifest via habitual regimens such as exercise, diet, sleep, excursions within nature, spiritual education, meditation, calming and stilling the mind, so that spirit flourishes, so that we truly get in touch with the essence of what we are. Pure God consciousness. Suffice to say that the very act of being mindful in relation to what we put into our bodies and how we feed our minds on the numinous, that's to say the spiritual, and train our muscles and visceral energy centers, the chakras, into ultimate health and congeniality with the ever-pervasive mind of God. In the ultimate endeavor in life for those of us who have the calling to grace. Grace is the gift from God of love and life. And when we realize that gift has come from somewhere higher, then we might start to have a little bit of gratitude, instead of thinking just like dopey Richard Dawkins, that it just made manifest out of cells and atoms, and that there's no spirit at all to it. I've seen him being interviewed by spiritual people, and he's you know, when people are speaking about panpsychism or idealism, I mean, those two ideologies, they are speaking to the fact that everything is conscious. And he was saying, oh, so you're telling me that a stone has sentience? No, Richard. What those people who are opining and have an allegiance with those ideologies are speaking about, that this whole thing is conscious and sentient, and everything within it is a facet of the consciousness and the sentience. But when we look at atoms, we know that they appear to be sentient. And this is why, you know, the double slit experiment is so curious, because they seem to have a mind of their own, and they make manifest when consciousness is observing them. And so it's kind of like, there's a conscious entity looking at me, I best perform. And that's what the universe apparently does. It performs via consciousness. The inanimate, you can't even say inanimate, because there's nothing in the universe that is inanimate. Everything is moving. Atoms, they're vibrating, you know, trillion times a second and all sorts of things, and they're coming in and out of existence, and they are morphing in and out of all different sorts of material things. So, for those of us who have the calling to grace, do you have the calling to grace? Are you entirely grateful for the experience that you're having now? We're having a human experience. We are not the human being. It's just an experience, people. It's like if you go and consume a McDonald's. You're not the McDonald's. The McDonald's becomes you. But the experiencing the McDonald's is something even over and above the body. Is something... It's something ineffable. This is why the Tao Te Ching, doesn't dare to utter even a semblance of anything coming remotely close to stating what anything is here. It's too vastly over and above the human intellect. All of the aforementioned pathways lead to a higher state of being and a richer and more profound depth of spiritual awakening, which climatically is to become unified with creation itself. So when I'm speaking in one of the chapters about how exercise brings me closer to God, and I explain why this is, and why yoga is very important and powerful. Yoga is an ideology. It's a religion in itself. Yoga means in union with God, and the exercise part of it is just a small facet of it. But the meditation and the contemplation and the prayer, all those sort of things, and the way of life, that's yoga. Defining the numinous is no easy task, as it pertains to a whole myriad of subtle shifts in perception on an ongoing basis. An ever-increasing clarity and beauty is felt and observed in a manner that evades adequate articulation. It's a deep and rich blessing, a removal of the scales from our eyes, which have clouded our vision of infinity. The clouding of our vision, the cloud of knowing. Speaking about the same thing, even using the same words. I'll let you know how that goes. The beauty is incomprehensibly infinite, of which I know that I am. I stand transfixed within the natural world, with the grace and blessing bestowed upon me from its source, which is loving, humbling, and terrifying due to its incomprehensibility. A living thing so vast and yet seemingly so concerned with every single speck of its self-creation. One can do nothing save to gaze in awe every second of each wakeful moment upon it. How are you feeling about these words? Do you feel anything? I noticed that many of you have reservations about subscribing to this channel because you know that I will be able to see that you are here, and many of you don't want me to know. You are voyeuring my videos, but I know who you are. I know who all of you are. I just do. And because you're not subscribed, then you can't express how you feel each video met with you. And by the way, I'm not sure whether you can comment. Can you comment without being subscribed? I think you can, can't you? But I know what's going on there, people. And of course I've read whatever you've written elsewhere, and so I know how you feel about things. With every glance in every direction, it is like standing in a hall of mirrors, where every single and combined reflection is that of yourselves. So this is why I'm always saying that the world is a reflection of ourselves. Of course it is. When we look at a tree, it's a reflection of ourselves in so many ways. The fact that it breathes in the gas that we breathe out, and it breathes out the gas that we breathe in, and then it has a overt isness about it, and then it has a sublime isness about it, which is equally as important and deep. Just like we have our consciousness and we have our unconscious. So the tree has its foliage and branches, and then it has its roots. And then they breathe and they live and they think. And they express themselves. I'm telling you, people, they even talk. This is why this green man imagery has been so prolific around the whole of the northern and southern hemispheres in relation to the Western oriented people. The pagan god of Pan, nature. So the whole world is a reflection of yourselves, of which we are all shards individually crafted by genius, never a single speck of existence being identical or entering the mundane. Always subtle varieties that intrigue and define and perplex us into a state of humble awe. How can it be that something so vast and pervasive never errs by lackadaisical misjudgment of duplication, not with a flake of snow nor with a hair on the head? Never a duplication. How is that possible? How is it possible that no snowflake is the same as the next? No hair on our heads is the same. What a blessing to be touched by grace, and how to fathom how it all came to be. The paradox of waking up, to find my very essence to be both the created and the creator. We are both God and God's creation. Both the created and the creator of existence itself. To be conscious of consciousness, to be subject to consciousness, whilst at the same time to be its projector. So we have a consciousness, but we're projecting our consciousness onto other conscious and sentient creatures, aren't we? The universe respects our consciousness, because as soon as one of us starts to look at it, it becomes material. This is powerful, people. For those of you that are not familiar and don't really know what the double slit experiment means in quantum physics, I beseech you to look into it. You won't grasp this thing with one visit to explanation. It takes time. It's like reading the Bible. It'll take time before the magnitude of what is written penetrates your soul. To be subject to consciousness whilst at the same time to be its projector. A dreamer dreaming of itself. God consciousness is dreaming of itself. Consciousness is living vicariously through all living creatures. As preposterous and as haughty as would appear to some folk, it seems to me an inescapable riddle that I am both the seer and the mirror, from which my reflection is projected back from whence it came. How so that the cosmos has the essence, substance and attributes that I myself possess and consist of? How is it that as above so below? How so that the sun, the earth and the wind and the fire can all be found within me? We consist of all those things. We're electromagnetic beings. Earth, wind, fire and water. That's what we are. How so that as far as my individuated shard of consciousness is concerned, everything that my senses perceive to be in the abstract are all perceived within my mind and body. The paradox is infinitely unto itself. The riddle is unsolvable. The mystery is indecipherable. The complexity too complex until one surrenders to the cosmic giggle of isness. It's all vastly over incomprehensible, bewildering, until we surrender to it being, it just being. We accept it. We don't no longer judge it. We don't no longer have any division in relation to it. It is all one. We're all one. It is me. I am it. Jordan Peterson is speaking to somebody last night. He's so prolific these days. I really do encourage you to listen to his talks, because if you like my videos, then you'll certainly like his, because he's just a bigger and more powerful version of what I am. His intellect knows no barriers. It really is cosmic. He's a very, very smart guy. So when we surrender to the cosmic giggle of isness, when we finally let the mystery be, we come to settle within its eternal stillness, the dream that has no beginning nor any end, when the final realization is that of love, and that pain, suffering, terror and trauma have all been characters acting out a part or a scene in the play of our lives. All of these things that we find objection to, pain and suffering, they're all facets of love, people. And this has been a quandary for a myriad of people forever. If God is so loving, is so powerful, why is there evil in the world? And when you look at the Bible scripture, Satan, Lucifer, was God's right-hand angel. And if God created everything, and God is love, then Satan or Lucifer must also have been created out of the same essence and desire and design. And then when he was placed governor over the earth to keep us in check, to offer guidance, because if we didn't respect pain, suffering, trauma, then it would be riotous here on earth, vastly over and above that which it is already. So that governor was placed upon earth to help guide us in the right direction. And many a beneficial thing comes out of suffering. Jordan Peterson also has a lot to say about the relationship of suffering. He's not entirely with that all suffering is beneficial, because he suffered for 2.5 years very, very badly, some of you all know. And he said, well, he could have learnt what he learnt in much less time. That suffering was prolonged and elongated, what he considered to be unnecessary. If the universe wanted to help him to learn something, he didn't need 2.5 years. Maybe 6 months would have been suffice. But who knows? Who are we to state such a thing? When we embrace all that once hurt us and crafted us into that which we are now, wisdom and inescapable wisdom and escapable end game for human existence. Something inevitable, unstoppable, tragic, and fraught with sorrow, but ultimately beautiful and genius. A reflection of God itself. The accumulation of suffering molds the spirit into the universal effigy of cosmic spiritualism. The mind of all minds, dreaming itself into existence, only to wash it all away, like a Buddhist monk having spent days creating beautiful mosaics simply for the sake of it, without a moment's thought of preservation, knowing that life, this incredible life, is all but a dream within the mind of an infinite dreamer, where permanence is only as permanent as a fleeting thought in our minds. To be succinct, and to only speak of my own evaluation of my life, or at least this tiny facet of my cosmic dream, I would summarize hitherto that our carnal purpose is to ultimately to seek wisdom, and our Creator, our greater consciousness, and to attain union with all that there is, the oneness of spirit from whence we came. The fine-tuning of our minds and bodies enables us to get closer to that endeavour, just like a strong musical instrument can find harmony only when all of its strings are finely tuned to the optimal pitch and vibrate in concordance with each other. You see, when our bodies are vibrating at the optimum level, we are speaking the language of God. When our bodies are not vibrating at the optimum level, when we don't have holistic health, then we cannot see God. When we are suffering How many accounts have we heard of people in biblical times, like Job, begging for the realization of the veracity of the love of God? Where is it? He was demanding when he was suffering so. When God struck a deal with Satan to stricken Job's life and to cause him suffering and to test his faith and love for God. During those difficult times, he was asking where God was. God said, "Who are you to question that which created the universe? Who are you to demand of me how I should love you?" Powerful stuff. You can listen to Jordan Peterson interpreting the book of Job. So these biblical illustrations, they all pertain to human psychology. Cain and Abel and all the rest of it. It's all human psychology. And so I'm going to do a chapter on what I consider religious scriptures to be the very first human psychology. It's an introduction into how our minds work and how our minds create the perceivable universe. Only they are written from a higher entity's perspective to encourage us to believe something vastly over and above the power of ourselves. But there is nothing more powerful than ourselves, because we are it. We pertain to it. We are the ocean. Only sometimes we can be forgiven for considering that we were the waves. You see, when a tempest comes about and the surface of the ocean starts to become agitated, then all of these waves come about, and then they seem to have an individuation and a life of their own and an existence of their own. But as soon as the tempest falls away, then so do all of these individuations, and they all slip back into the one. And that's what we do. We pop out, we make manifest in a human form, and we are, in a tempest lots of the time. And we have these egos which enable us to be hypnotized into considering that we are actually a reality, that we're so important, and why did this happen to me? Do you think that a cell in a virus, in a petri dish, cries out the same lamentations? We are nothing more than that. We are a growth upon the earth. We have a high level of sentience in comparison to other growths, but we're little more than that, people. We are expressions of consciousness, just the same as everything else. All of the other life forms all over the globe living in a world of their own. Birds live in bird world. In actual fact, there's a myriad of bird worlds, because when you look at these birds, you will notice that they don't seem to even notice other birds which aren't of their variety. You can have blackbirds next to starlings, they'll pay each other no mind. You can have pigeons next to jackdaws, and they will pay them no mind. the pigeons will be aggroing the other pigeons, and the jackdaws will be doing the same to their variety, but you will never see one of these birds attacking another species. It's like they don't even come into their existence. They don't have any conscious awareness of them. Do you think that a robin has a conscious awareness of a pigeon? They live in completely different worlds. So robins live in robin's world, pigeons live in pigeon's world, and never the twain shall meet. You will never see them interacting with one another. But we interact with many other species. We like to interact with primates and canines, felines, and dolphins, and whales, and a whole myriad of different variety of creature. We like to interact with them, and if we get that reciprocated, then we love that. We love that bonding. But if we were trying to interact with a fish, then we wouldn't get too much from it, would we? So I came out this morning to sit here to read my book because in this part of the world we have a window of opportunity for a few hours where the sun is out before it goes completely overcast and probably starts raining again. So I look at the world and I act accordingly to it, and whenever the weather is good, then I will do whatever facet of what I like to do within that environment. And so I'll be taking my shirt off. It's actually warm. It was too hot for me, and it's only like 9 a.m. To sit on one of the other benches with the sun glaring down. It was too much, and so for the video I came and made it here. But I will now go and sit in the sun, getting some vitamin D, having my beautiful pagan god bless my being. The sun for me is at least a god. It may not be the ultimate god, but most certainly it's a very important god to me. Why is that? Why is it so important to me? Maybe it's not to you. You just think it's the sun, it's a star, and you're in the office all day, and whenever you go out into the sun you'll never dream of taking your shirt off due to your embarrassment of your flesh, or maybe you're a female and whatever reason it's not your bag. But whenever the sun is shining, I have to have it kissing my body. I have to have a passionate and sensual relationship with it, and I worship it. Really I do, because I know the massive difference of the way in which I feel when the sun is blessing me. When it's overcast and I can't see and feel the sun, I feel very different. And when taking DMT, if it's cloudy, forget it. Forget it, as far as I'm concerned. Take DMT when the sun's out and you will be in ecstasy. You will be in heaven and you will praise that fireball in the sky as the god of life, because without it there'll be nothing. And so I pay homage to it every single day. I worship the sun. I worship its creation, which is all things living. And so there you have it, people. I'll let you know how this book goes. And oh, by the way, one of the viewers has very kindly created the first 6 chapters into audio version. Isn't that wonderful? You know, I appreciate your guys' help, because I know nothing about that stuff. And, I've mentioned already that another viewer turned me on to the editing package, and now, you know, I've gone through that learning curve, and I'll still try my chapters on the editing package just to see if there's something that, you know, I've missed that I would like to include, because the editing package has, you know, been very beneficial in increasing the level of my grammar, so yeah, now lots of you have said, oh, you know, we'd love an audio version. Well, I asked the guy that's creating these audios, they are in a female voice, and it's pretty good, but I suppose after a while it might start to grate. Of course, he, like many of you, suggested that I should do the audio, because that's the perfect thing, isn't it? You know, when somebody creates something, then it's, you know, I mean, for instance, you know, we all know when listening to like people like Alan Watts or Jordan Peterson or you know, Sam Harris, when other people read their stuff, it's not the same. You can't picture it. No, it doesn't seem to work. But when they read it themselves, then it's all going on. It is perfect. And so I was sort of like, you know, questioning whether there is a package, and if there's not now, very soon I suppose there would be, whereby I just have to speak, or indeed I feed one of my videos into this package and it replicates my dialect. It replicates my let me say, the nuanced way I speak, and then it recreates the audiobook. I'm sure something like that, you know, something which, you know, can replicate the inflection that you know, we use as individuals. And so if any of you know anything about that, then, you know, I'd very much appreciate that, because then I could very easily, you know, make the audiobook. So anyway, guys, there's been a lot of information in this video, as usual, and a lot for you to think about, for those of you that are given to thinking about things of this nature. And so see how we go with it.